Hi, I'm going to, I've done maybe 55 ethics videos, and I may have done quite a few, and I have a playlist of them, and I've done lots of different things in deontology and stuff like that. But I have not done a lot of things. I have not referred to a lot of writers, and which is why I'm going to continue, and I'm going to do I'm going to address some issues I haven't addressed, and address some philosophers I haven't addressed. And I'm mostly going to be working out of this book here. It's another anthology by Lewis Pointman, just like the religion one is that I'm doing right now. And I guess there's tons of groups of topics in here that I would like to address, and that I will address eventually. But I'm going to start from the first real issue we have in here, which is the division between ethical relativism and objectivism. Ethical relativism is the belief that morality is restricted to your location in your culture, and that there is no morality which stretches above all the culture and all the settings, and that the only morality or ethics that there is restricted, and it's very different depending on where you are and who you're with. And then objectivism is a belief that there is a certain moral code or idea of morality which stretches above different cultures in different places, even if there are some places which don't abide by this. Or, I mean, some people think that there is a morality which stretches above all of them, and that they obey that moral code in some way or another. And that can be connected to whether God exists and all that stuff. So I wish I will, talk about. But I'm gonna start with ethical relativism right now. But then I'm gonna do two videos here. One's gonna be there's gonna be three eventually on ethical relativism. The first one this one's gonna be with respect to a little excerpt from Herodotus Histories, and then the other one's going to be by a discussion with respect to Ruth Benedict, and the other one by a guy named Gilbert Harman. All of those are relativists, and then the other one is going to be a video discussing a defense of ethical objectivism by Lewis Pointman. I'm going to read this little excerpt from Herodotus Histories here and discuss what he has to say, and what he has to say with respect to objectivism. And this is called Customer's King, because he really talks about that in his histories. He was the first real historian, and people like Thucydides and Plutarch wasn't really a historian; he's more of a biographer, but he followed, and as well as the practice of history followed Herodotus. Thus, it appears certain to me by a great variety of proofs that Cambyses was raving mad. He would not else have set himself to make a mock of holy rites and long established usages. For if one were to offer men to choose out of all the customs in the world, such as seemed to them the best, they would examine the whole number and end by preferring their own. That's it right there. They would look at everybody's customs, and they would look at all those things, and then they would end up preferring their own, versus the others. So convinced are they that their own usages far surpass those of all others. Unless therefore a man was mad, it is not likely that he would make sport of such matters. That people have this feeling about their laws may be seen by very many proofs, among others by the following. Darius, after he had got the kingdom, called into his presence certain Greeks who were at hand, and asked what he should pay them to eat the bodies of their fathers when they died. To which they answered that there was no sum that they would tempt them to do such a thing. He then sent for certain Indians of the race of the Calacians, men who eat their fathers, and asked them, while the Greeks stood by, and they knew but by the help of the interpreter that was said, what he should give them to burn the bodies of their fathers at their decease. The Indians exclaimed aloud and bade them forbear such language, such as men's won't herein. And Pender was right in my judgment when he said, "Custom is king over all." That's it right there. I mean, we have different tribes and different customs everywhere. That's something to think about, I think, because that is something to think about. Because if we go from, talking about people here who will cremate people. I mean, some people bury, some people cremate their dead relatives. People who cremate here, I mean, if someone asked a person today, eat the body of your father after, he deceased, then we'd be like, no, that's disrespectful. It's cannibalism. It's against society, and furthermore, it's disgusting. And it would be just uncivilized and horrid, and nobody here would do it, at all. But then if we call, I'm sure that there are some tribes out there today who practice cannibalism. I'm sure. There are probably very few, but there are some out there in this world that have to practice it to some extent. And then if we ask them, what do you want to do with this body? How about we burn it? And he's like, no, we'd rather do this, because we think that it's correct to do this. So I guess with respect to what Herodotus has to say, the relativists have a point, but I'm not gonna yield to them. I think that they have a point in that there are many different locations and cultures with people who do different things based upon their culture and who they are and where they're at. Because the customs here in the U.S. and even in different states are very, very different from what you find in like a place like Laos or India. So I mean, the relativists have a huge point in that they're at least half right, because I mean they are right, I think, but I'm not gonna totally surrender to them yet, because I think that there is in quite a few cultures there is some kind of overarching moral code, and I will return to this with the three other articles on the subject that I want to really get deep into this. With this little thing here, I'm not really getting too much into it, but he has a good point, Herodotus does, and I think we need to, if we're going to study this, then I think this needs to be noted, and we need to think about all the different places and cultures that we have in this world, and think about, if we would do the same thing given different problems and trials. So yeah.